Hey, this is Brooklyn Vegan editor Andrew Sacker, and I'm stoked to welcome you to the very first episode of the new Brooklyn Vegan podcast. We're going to be talking about all the music we love across punk and metal and rap and indie rock and folk and so much more. We're going to have interviews with artists, deep dives into specific genres and scenes and trends, and whatever else happens as we go down this podcasting journey. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and also find us 24/7 at brooklynvegan.com, where we're constantly posting music news like new songs, tour announcements, album reviews, live show coverage and photos, and so much more. We've got a lot of cool stuff on the horizon, but first, this episode is with Barry Johnson, frontman of Joyce Manor, whose great new record, 40 Ounces to Fresno, comes out on Epitaph Records this week. Barry and I talk a lot about the new record, and he also reflects on the 10th anniversaries of Joyce Manor's first two albums. He talks about how getting into music changes as you get older. He talks about his relationship with ska, and so much more. It was a great chat, and here it is. So, before we get into the new album, you recently celebrated the 10th anniversary of your debut with some shows, and since then, your second album turned 10 too. 10 years feels like such a major milestone, especially when you think about how many of your former peers have broken up over the years. What kind of thoughts have you had reflecting on like 10 years of the album that started it all, and or just about the way that album's impact has grown over time?
I guess 10 years is it's when you're allowed to start kind of getting nostalgic about things or celebrating things, you know what I mean? It feels like a milestone. And I guess the thing that it kind of made me realize or think about is how different the crop of bands that we were kind of a part of or that we're kind of associated with, how it was kind of a special time. And it didn't feel like it at the time. Do you know what I mean? Like I didn't even necessarily like being compared to those bands at the time. I felt like we were kind of something different,
Mm-hmm.
or we're coming from a different place. So I guess the bands I'm talking about would be like Tiger's Jaw, Title Fight, even like the Menzingers, Touche Amore. Like at the time, I was just like, we don't fucking sound like those bands. Like my view of what we were doing was I don't know. I was so in it. You know what I mean? I was so involved that every like subtle detail that makes us different seemed huge to me. But now looking back, like looking at kind of the current crop of younger bands, like it feels very different. Like the world is very different. Technology is very different. The way people consume music is completely different. And the reference points for like what those kids are influenced by are pretty fucking different. So I see a lot more similarities between us and Title Fight and Tiger's Jaw and kind of where we were coming from and what we were influenced by and, you know, just the cultural touchstones that we were drawing from. I just kind of, I get it more now, you know, with a little bit of distance. And it feels cool to be kind of from this kind of moment in like underground music or pop punk or emo or whatever you want to call it. You know, it's like, yeah, you don't know what you got till it's gone. You know, it really was like we were, I think, a cool crop of bands, and it was a cool moment. And that's how I feel looking back on it, where I'm like, damn, we were all kind of from the same exact time and came out of the same exact scene, and all kind of had the same exact booking agent. We're all booked by this guy Merrick, and you know, we are all now for the most part still doing it, and we're like these, you know, established bands now, but we were scrappy kids, you know, that yeah, it's just it makes me feel more a little more warm and fuzzy, where at the time I didn't. At the time I was kind of a pretentious asshole. I thought we were kind of better than I just not better, like I just thought we were doing something different. I couldn't see the similarities, and it was just frustrating. At the time I felt to get compared to any of those bands, but now I find it flattering, and I can see what a special time it was.
Mm-hmm. I also just feel like with what you and all those bands were kind of going through is like you all really came from like really DIY type underground. Like, I mean, like when you played New York when that album was actually new, you played like Party Expo. And
Yeah.
then like the 10th anniversary is at Central Park. Like I think Joyce Manor might be the first band of all time to like play an album at Party Expo when it's new and celebrate its anniversary at Central Park.
Yeah, definitely.
Uh,
They definitely don't. I don't think that Simon and Garfunkel played Party Expo.
right.
Could be
Right.
wrong, but they might have hit Party Expo one time. But yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what I mean where it's amazing. It's like, wow. And we also, I mean, Tiger's Jaw were supposed to play that show, and yeah, I just feel a lot more like less up my own ass and less like less delusional about what we. I don't know, man. We were like pop punk band with blast beats that was like kind of indie rock tinged, and I just kind of didn't. But now I listen to Title Fight or early Tiger's Jaw stuff, and I'm like, these are weird bands too that are also kind of channeling indie rock and hardcore and you know emo or like yeah, post hardcore. I don't know. There's like a lot. There's a lot going on because we all I guess came from file sharing age, but not streaming. It wasn't a streaming era. It was more like I guess it would be more like tape trading or like it was still more curated and yeah, it's just very specific time and there was a very specific taste and yeah, I think it's really cool that we're all still doing it and all still crushing it.
Yeah. And then like, you were talking before about, like I mean, you in those bands, I think you probably had some shared influences and stuff. And now, I mean, like you're an influential band. Like you talk about the new crop of bands, like bands pop up all the time who are referencing Joyce Manor.
Yeah.
Like when you started to see that, was that like a little surreal at all for you?
Yeah, well, anytime you hear a band that's influenced by you, it's like someone doing an impression of you, it's like even if it's meant to be flattering, it's like I don't fucking sound like that. You know what I mean? Like um and again, I think when you're in it, it's one thing, but then probably I'll listen back to those bands in a couple of years and I'll be like, yeah, this is cool. Like um I've like warmed to a band like Prince Daddy and the Hyena, but like when I first heard it, like I could hear Joyce Manor in it, and it feels weird. It felt kind of like ugh. But then I think I was listening to something on Spotify, maybe like Tiger's Jaw or something, and when the album finished, it started just going rogue, and it played a Prince Daddy song, and I was like, I'm feeling this is cool. I get it, I was less defensive about it, and so it's just the context in which you hear it and how in it you are, and yeah, I'm just trying to stay like open and but it's weird to hear a band and you can tell that they listen to your band. It's a
Hmm.
little too close to home or something. And I try not to listen to that in my free time. But like I said, Spotify randomly just threw a Prince Daddy song at me, and I was off guard, and I was like feeling it. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of see why this is the hit, and like this is a cool song, and I was flattered. But yeah, it's a little
Totally.
weird. It's a little weird.
I mean, I feel like, you even get that as a fan a bit. Like once you start hearing bands that you're like, oh, these are influenced by the bands that like I grew up with, it's like a different type of thing, right? Than when you're going backwards and you're like, oh, I'm getting into like Minor Threat because the bands I like told me to, and then it's like you hear
Totally.
the opposite and it's like, wait a minute, I know this already.
Yeah, it can't help but sound a little derivative to you,
Mm,
even though, but I think it's just because of how close you are to it. And there's also weird feelings of kind of being aged out and feeling old. So there's a lot going on there, and you got to really separate what you're taking personally and what is just, and try to be open and try to embrace it and try to like, uh, enjoy what's good there and try to see what the kids are connecting to. It's like, what are the kids hearing that my like ancient jaded ears aren't hearing, because at a certain point everything's not like the guy who is doing auxiliary stuff in our band is this dude Neil, and he's a little younger than us, and sometimes he'll show me bands, and I'm so quick to just be like, dude, this is like the 18th version of this band I've heard over the last 20 years. You know what I mean? Like every couple of years, this kind of thing pops up, and I'm like, he's not like a total kid or anything, but he's just more open and excited about stuff than I am. Where I'm so quick to just be like, heard this before, like, yeah, okay, I get it. Another post punk band, like, I've heard that, you know what I mean? Like this shit was derivative 20 years ago. So,
Right.
you know, but
Totally.
trying to stay open and see what's, and just not become totally jaded and insufferable.
Yeah. I mean, I think it takes work as you age, like,
Yeah.
but it's rewarding, I think, when you do it.
Yeah. Cause sometimes you like, you know, you discredit stuff that actually has something going on. And once you kind of can get past your initial knee jerk reaction to just, dismiss everything as being like, you know, I totally get what this band is doing. I totally get their influences. This is nothing exciting. But you know, you spend some time and it starts to reveal itself of like, oh no, there's a songwriter here, and there's a, just something a little. There's a spark. There's something that people are latching onto and hearing. It's not just so. Yeah, just got to be careful of that knee jerk reaction to dismiss stuff outright.
Totally.
Or I have to be careful of it.
Right. No,
Other people can do whatever the fuck they want. I have to be
right.
careful of it. Yeah.
Right. Well, speaking of music that's been dismissed, so your
Joyce
second
Manor?
album,
Yeah, sure.
so your second album also just turned 10, and I mean that one's always been a little divisive amongst fans, and it's largely songs that you rarely play live.
Yeah,
But there's also a faction of fans who really ride for that album. I
yeah.
really like that album. I'm like a big fan of that one. So I was wondering at this point, like 10 years down the line, what's your like current relationship to those songs?
I love that one. I
Yeah.
think that one's great. I think it's kind of like if you were telling someone a story about a time you had a nervous breakdown and you're like laughing about it now. You're like, yeah, dude, I was like acting crazy and I was saying insane shit and I was, you know, uh, I had starting to get tunnel vision and stuff. Like you can kind of see the humor in it now, but it was a painful time. I was really struggling to follow up the first record that people had really loved, and I didn't, you know, it was the most self conscious my songwriting has ever felt. Like I was just really, really aware that people were going to be listening to it, and like it's too much like the first record. It's too different than the first record. And I also, you know, I didn't really set out to be in a pop punk band. You know, like I love pop punk. Like I love it. I listen to pop punk all the time. But I didn't really want to be like pigeonholed. And this was still the era of like um Warp Tour was still a big thing. You know, there was still that kind of like newfound glory esque shit going, and like, you know, a lot of people who are into that stuff really responded to our band. And I think, you know, I was really concerned with being cool and being like accepted by the cool kids. And I really wanted to prove that we're like not just a pop punk band. So I was really leaning into the more like esoteric and weird shit and trying to like rep like Wire or like Young Marble Giants or like just be like, I have a cool record collection. I swear to God, you know what I mean? Like, and you know, I was maybe not marrying those things seamlessly, which I think we did later on Never Hungover Again. Like Never Hungover
Hmm.
Again sounds like someone who has like some Slumberland Records stuff, owns Enema of the State, is like, you know, like they're like is into Sebadoh. Like you can hear kind of all these things happening, but in one song. Like the soup kind of became its own thing. Whereas on that second record is super schizophrenic. Like it's like 1 minute it's doing this, the next minute it's doing that, and that's kind of cool. And listening to it now, I'm just like, wow, that was bold. Like that transition is pretty cool, and it works weirdly. But it was not fun to make, and really, really self conscious, and kind of trying to sabotage my career so no one else, like I barely had a fucking career then, and one record out, you know what I mean? But I was like,
Hmm.
I was so up my own ass, and I was so self important and so like, you know, concerned with what other people thought of me, you know. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to drive my career into the ground so no one else can, you know, so no one else can take it from me. I was so anxious and so nervous and so much concerned with, am I going to blow it? This is my one chance and I'm going to fucking blow it. But it's like, if I fucking just smash it into the ground, then no one else can, you know. I just wasn't, well, it wasn't a happy time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I needed therapy, and I eventually got it. So yeah,
Well, that's good.
yeah, thanks.
Um, yeah, I mean, I've definitely like referred to that album on Twitter as like your Pinkerton,
Sure.
like and I feel like, and then you did like you said you tried to sabotage in a way, but then Never Hung Over Again was almost like this other like classic. Like it kind of like
Thanks.
that was almost like really like the breakthrough kind of, right? I feel like that
I
was
think
when,
so.
yeah. Like I
Yeah,
feel like the first one is the one for so many people, but like
sure.
Never Hung Over Again really took you guys to like mid-sized clubs and like Epitaph
Hmm.
Records, Pitchfork, like that kind of
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, we went from having like zero fans anywhere to like having a a small fan base, but we could play in New York and there'd be people there. Even the party.
Hmm.
I don't know how many people were at the. It's called Party Expo. Is that what it's called?
That was that place, yeah, on the first
What,
record, yeah.
40 people there? 40 people there? But that was such a fucking slam dunk to us. Like, dude, we went to New York. There were fucking 40 people there. Because at that point, there was only 40 people in LA. So it was just it was cool, and that was just such a huge. That's how low the bar was, or how and like careerist or ambitious we were. To where like that was like we made it, we did it, we played in New York, and there was fucking people there, amazing. So um I guess yeah, I kind of like to think more in terms of like artistic success and like success as far as like songwriting wise, and I think Never Hung Over Again is the first time we made something that it doesn't really sound like anything else. Like it's actually unique, and it's actually like I can't, if you can tell me another song that sounds like The Jerk, like I would love to hear it. I'd be like, yeah, let's hear it. But it's like it's just a really cool amalgamation of a few different things that becomes its own unique thing. And I think it has to do with a lot of it has to do with Chase's guitar playing. I think Chase is a really really unique guitar player and writes really amazing parts. And it's kind of the way my like the vocal melodies weave inside of Chase's stuff. It's just kind of special, and I think that really becomes apparent on, like, we tried to do a bit of that on Of All Things, but we didn't really start having success with it until Never Hung Over Again.
For sure. I mean, I even think the debut doesn't really sound like any other band. I mean, I think it's like everything you were saying. It's all those sort of similar but also disparate influences that you guys sort of just channel in like a supernatural way.
Yeah, I mean it's pop punk with blast beats, which is, I mean, they're fake blast beats, but they're fucking blast beats. Like it's not really been done, so or that I'm aware of. I mean, Descendants kind of get a little bit like that, but not in the same way. And I can really hear the influences on the first record like pretty clearly. Like there's a song that sounds quite a bit like Shinobu. Beach Community is pretty much just Weezer, but it's a little more like pissed off sounding, even more pissed off I think than Pinkerton. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
it's a little more aggro, and Leather Jacket, same kind of thing. That beginning riff is super Converge. It's what's that record? You Fail Me, like the first track, and like the stops and starts are pretty similar to the intro of You Fail Me. So I know where I'm picking from, but other people don't. So they hear it and they're like, wow, this is a really fresh take on a um, genre that's been done to death, And so, but I can hear where I'm pulling from. Whereas I Never Hung Over Again, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck that is. Yeah, it just feels special and kind of unique to me.
Right. I mean, I guess it's like the more you do it, the more you just like at some point you just develop your voice and it's like you forget like who the influences are and it just becomes like part of you as a songwriter.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And that's and I really think I couldn't have reached that level alone. I really think it's when I started working with Chase that we started bringing stuff out of each other that was bigger than the sum of its parts. And really that's when we started writing stuff that's pretty it's special, and I'm really really proud of it, and really grateful to be a part of a songwriting partnership that's done stuff that I still listen to it and I'm like, how the fuck did we do that? Like that is just so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, moving on to the new stuff. So the bio for the new album says you originally planned to take a small break from music after $1 Million to Kill Me, but then this new album was born. What changed?
Well, I started to feel like during the touring cycle and even the writing and recording of $1 Million to Kill Me, we were just kind of keeping the wheels spinning, like I felt I kind of wanted to slow down and assess and take stock of my life because it's just been on the road for like 10 years straight. You don't really have a home life and you don't really have relationships at home or healthy ones anyway. And just kind of really wanted to take stock of things and settle into a comfortable and healthy routine at home. And we kind of just kept it going for $1 Million to Kill Me because things were going well. And we got offered some cool tours that were like, yeah, let's do them. Yeah, okay, let's do this. So, yeah, we kind of I felt like I was running on empty a little bit. And just after we finished the touring, wrapped up the touring for that record, it was like, just told the guys, I was like, hey, I kind of would like to take a nice little chunk of time off. And me and a couple friends opened a bar called the Sardine in San Pedro. And I was like, I just want to bartend there to make some money and just kind of get into a routine at home. And I think it would be good for my songwriting as far as just like falling into a healthy routine and, not just trying to write between tours. And so, yeah, I just decided I'd like to do that. And then fucking pandemic happened. And then I didn't do anything for a few months. Like for a few months, I was like, fucking okay. And I just played video games and went for walks, drank beer, smoked weed, listened to records. Like it was, just all the shit I like to do. So it was awesome. And that got old after a little while. And so I was like, well, what can I do? And I started kind of going through, actually I started going through old stuff too, because we put out that collection record. So that kind of got me digging through like old songs and unreleased stuff. And I realized I had a handful of things that I was like, oh, I think I could do something with this. Or if I worked on that a little more, I think there's something there. So, I had Secret Sisters, which we initially talked about putting on the collection record, but ultimately decided it felt out of place. Everything on that's from before the first record, and Secret Sisters is from the Never Hung Over Again sessions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, maybe we put this on the new record. And I think it'd be cool to kind of do a few things that sounded kind of like that. Like Secret Sisters kind of slams in that like emo way, like it just fucking slams, It has like those pauses and then it slams. And I was like, there wasn't a ton of that on $1 Million to Kill Me. There's a little bit of it on Cody, but I was like, yeah, we don't have a ton of stuff that kind of slams. So, we did Gotta Let It Go, which has like that kind of emo groove and that slam kind of thing. I was like, yeah, it'd be cool to do a record like that. We've never really done a record that's focused on that. And of course, like, I just wrote what I was going to write. You know what I mean? Like you can intend to do whatever you want, but once you're, trying to get inspired and get creative, like what's going to happen is going to happen. And so, yeah, there ended up only being a few moments on the record like that. The cover that opens the record being one of them. That one kind of has like a Weezer-y kind of heavy emo kind of groove. And yeah, but that was the intention to kind of be like, what if we made a record that kind of all sounded like Secret Sisters, but it didn't. Yeah.
Right.
But that was the initial intention, yeah.
Right. So let's talk about that cover a bit. So it's an OMD song. It was originally on the split with Blake from Jawbreaker for that comic book series, What's the Furthest Place from Here?
Yeah, no big deal.
Right. So it's it's your first cover on an album since Video Killed the Radio Star. Yeah. And also it opens the album, which I feel like is kind of a unique placement for a cover.
Pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, Blondie did it, so like it's been done, but I feel like
hanging on the telephone.
Yeah.
Oh, weird.
But they also, I feel like, I don't want to get into what Blondie did, but I feel like they almost like stole that song and made it their own.
Yeah, because that Nerves version was like, I think it did get a proper release, but it was hardly known at all. It's kind of become more known, in more recent years, yeah.
So this is definitely a little different than that.
Yeah,
But
totally.
yeah, so why the decision to include a cover on an album again, and why this song?
Um, well, we just recorded it for that split. Really liked how it turned out. And I was like, this kind of fits with the Secret Sisters vibe of just, that like big crunchy guitars and, so I was like, yeah, let's put it on the record. And then I initially had it sequenced last. And I just trying to figure out the sequence, tried a million different versions. I had a third for a little while, and it just didn't feel right. It felt like it kind of disrupted the flow. So I was like, well, it either has to go first or last, and it's pretty weird to put it first. So I was kind of adverse to that initially, obviously. But the more I listened to it, I was like, it's kind of a fucking kick-ass first song, and I like doing weird shit. It was weird to put "Video Killed the Radio Star," a fucking like skate punk version of that, in the middle of your record, in the middle of your fucking after like a lo-fi acoustic like Iron and Wine or some shit sounding song. That's fucking weird. It's bizarre. So I was like, yeah, we're never been afraid to get bizarre. And it's kind of an old timey thing to do. Like a lot of like 60s records open with a cover, and
Right.
it's just like, yeah, it's just fucking weird, and, it has 9 songs like our second record. It has an 80s cover like our second record. It's just like a kind of, 10 years later, we're kind of trying to do a similar record, but I wouldn't say it's that much like the second record because it's super not self-conscious. Like it was probably the most relaxed I've ever been. The songs went through the least amount of editing or just kind of reworking than they ever have. So, yeah, it was just kind of like, yeah, it's a pretty Joyce Manor thing to do.
Hmm. Yeah, it does. Like, I feel like this album does, at least to me, feel almost a little spiritually similar to that album. Like, and also like it's
Yeah.
like I feel like it's almost like not in a bad way, but like a bit of like a hodgepodge. Like Secret
Yeah.
Sisters, like you said, it's an old song, and then like NBTSA is also an old song, which
Hmm.
you had said in the press materials is actually a different version of Secret Sisters.
Isn't that
Is
crazy?
that how
It's
does that
just
work? Like,
exactly. So
I mean, seriously.
no, I know.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
So I'll tell you.
Okay, yeah.
So after the second record, I wrote a batch of songs. And this is when I was still doing primarily like all of the writing. So the first 2 records, I wrote almost everything. The second record chases a couple guitar parts, but he hadn't really come into his own as a guitar player yet. He just like leveled up like crazy on Never Hung Over Again and started writing these like amazing parts that just sound like Chase, like they don't sound like anybody else. And he just came into his own as a musician out of nowhere on that record. But the first 2 records were mostly me, and I was just so neurotic and would write things and rework them and scrap them and keep part of it and then go back to the old version, and then like I was just super I really overwork things, and that's how much I would overwork things. So I wrote Never Be the Same Again. It's about getting abducted by aliens, and for me it was just kind of like a fun pop punk song, but I was trying to like break through. I was trying to write, I didn't want to just like write a fun pop punk song, so I completely reworked it. I changed the chords, I changed the melody, I changed the lyrics. There's like, I think only really one similarity. I rewrote the solo. The only similarity is that in Never Be the Same Again, I say, I don't know why I want you to know. And then in Secret Sisters, I say, I want you to know. It was like literally the only thing. And it's like, can I tell you a secret? And then I was like, well, that's a little generic. So it became Secret Sisters. That's a little more cryptic, So
Mhm.
it's just changed so much that they don't even resemble each other. But there's like little tiny things that stay the same. So that's why I felt good about putting it on a record. It's like, oh, there's kind of this thread you can follow, and maybe I can kind of create this like very loose like concept that is, I mean, it's totally imagined, but like if you kind of conspiracy theorists, like you can see something if you really want to, you can like,
Mhm.
oh, and draw parallels, but it's bullshit. There's really nothing except that those 2 songs. I somehow managed to just completely build it up from the ground to become a completely different song. But that's how I used to work back then, and I did that with a lot of stuff. So
Nice. Um, so you did this album with Rob Schnapf, who you also did Cody with, and I think that makes this the first time you did a second album with the same producer that you'd done
yep.
an album. What is so special about your relationship with Rob?
Um, I guess Rob is just he is such a great producer. Like he makes these subtle changes to your songs that make a not so subtle difference in the quality. Like he'll change one little thing that seems and it just like the whole thing becomes so much more listenable and exciting and holds your interest and yeah, he's such a great producer and you know I should be careful what I say, but like it was awesome working with Kurt Ballou, but I part of me wishes we had done Million Dollars to Kill Me with Rob, just because I think we had a great thing going by the end of Cody, and it was just wanting to try something new. And Kurt did a great job on Million Dollars to Kill Me, but we had really developed a common language with Rob, and so it was kind of a no brainer for me to go back to Rob because I just realized that um, where we had gotten the point we had got to with him by the end of Cody was cool and special. And I'd go do another record with Rob in a heartbeat. I think he made the songs like from the demos to what Rob did to them on this record. It's pretty astounding the amount that he improved them.
I always felt like Rob was kind of a cool fit on Cody because, like, I feel like you guys had been this like punk emo whatever type band for a while, and then it's like sort of this prettier record, and
Mm-hmm.
like he had kind of done that with like Saves the Day and like the Anniversaries. Like he kind of had this history of like making like emo bands sound a little prettier like later in their career.
Totally.
Um,
I mean, that's exactly what went to him. Like those Saves the Day
mhm.
records, and I mean, he did a great Guided by Voices record, but I don't think he really. They were so established on their own. He didn't really kind of bring them to that next level. I mean, he did
Mhm.
the same thing with Elliot. Like,
Yeah.
I love the records he did with Elliot, but I also really like the stuff that Elliot did prior to working with Rob. Like and so, but yeah, really, I like what he can do for a pop punk band like Saves the Day.
Mhm.
Like he can just bring. Rob is really knowledgeable musically, as far as like he'll show you like cool Beatles, like, oh, have you ever actually learned this Beatles song? And he'll show you like these cool chords or like zombies stuff. Like, oh man, like, isn't that chord cool? And like, isn't it cool how they do this little change? And he's actually figured out the voicings and stuff. And it's amazing to like see like, oh man, you just know all that shit. Like, I know how to play like, you know, Dysentery Gary. Like,
Right. Yeah.
like I know how to play like uh fucking Island in the Sun or some shit. Like
Mhm.
I'm not a super I'm not as chordy, but he can see what I'm doing, like with the chords and the melody, and he can just make it a little richer and a little more deep. And like, what if we did like this voicing and sing this note for the harmony, but the harmony only comes in here, and just these really sophisticated things that are really tasteful, and they're really, yeah, I guess tasteful is a really good way of putting it. Like he's not trying to make it a hit or make it more like maximalist. He's like just trying to subtly improve it, and that subtlety is just what makes it. I mean, I lack subtlety. My songwriting is blunt. Like my I don't have the finesse that he has. Like he's like, okay, well, what if we just take like what you have is really good. What if we just gently and then it's like, oh, that's amazing, but you kept what was there intact. I'm like, yeah, this is good. I'm gonna smash it completely because it's not great, and
Mhm.
then and so yeah, just someone like that is invaluable. You know what I mean? Like, that's really rare to find someone who can like really nurture your songs and also he's really fun to hang out with. Like he's really fun to drink beers and smoke weed with. So I also was like, that sounds like a great time, especially during the fucking pandemic where we couldn't hang out and party and shit. So, because I've been hanging out and partying with Chase and Matt for 10 years, and then this is the first time I haven't been able to do that at all. Like, I wanted to take a break from the band stuff, but I didn't want to take a break from fucking hanging out with Matt and Chase. Like, I didn't need a break from those guys. Those are my fucking boys. So it was like, oh, we get to hang out with Matt and Chase and Rob. Like, that's a fucking party. Like, that's a good time.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was just a no-brainer.
That's awesome. I wonder if he like did something similar working with Save Today, because I feel like In Reverie is such like a chords record. Like it's just like big, yeah.
He told me, he's like, yeah, I just showed, I showed Chris, what are those called? Major sevenths, major and minor sevenths. He didn't know what those were before. And he should, because Chris was like fucking 20 when they did,
Right.
Stay Rare, which is fucking insane. Like, I hear a lot of these young bands and I'm like, oh, you know, they're young, they're still figuring it out. But I'm like, they're fucking 26. I'm like, Chris Conley did fucking Stay Where You Are when he was 20. Like, there's no excuse. Anyway, Rob just showed him major and minor sevenths, and then he came back and had In Reverie like completely written with these like super fucking crazy, beautiful, like jazzy almost chords. Yeah, it's just, that's, Rob just kind of gave him that and he's like, on your way. And then he just came back with In Reverie, which I fucking love In Reverie.
Yeah, no, it's so good.
Yeah.
So you've also been kind of hopping between drummers lately, and you did this one with
Always.
Tony. Yeah, right, for a while.
Yeah.
So you did this one with Tony for Motion City Soundtrack.
Yeah.
How did you link up with him, and what do you feel like he brought that was new for Joyce Manor?
Oh shit! So our drummer Pat decided to go to law school, which is awesome. And Pat ruled, but he was in Philly, which was just logistically kind of difficult. And yeah, it was amazing playing with Pat and getting to know Pat. Like, I love Pat, and he's a wonderful person. But during the pandemic, it presented a problem because he couldn't just come to LA. So we were like, yeah, well, he's going to go to law school, and let's just get a session drummer. We never had done a session drummer. And my first thought was Josh Freese. I was like, oh, Josh is incredible. He lives in Long Beach. Like, he's not doing shit because of the fucking pandemic. So he's not on tour with fucking Nine Inch Nails or some shit. So, and I asked Brett from Epitaph, I was like, yo, should we ask Josh Freese to play drums on this? And he's like, yo, Josh is great, but there's a lot of people who are great. And he's like, who I think would be a really great fit is this guy, Tony Thaxton. And I was familiar with Motion City Soundtrack. I only got into him in the last few years, but I heard them and I was like, oh, this is fucking awesome. Like, I kind of assumed it wouldn't be my cup of tea, but I actually heard it and I was like, oh, these hooks are like unreal. And you could tell those dudes aren't into like pop punk. They're into, you know, more sophisticated music. They're like Minneapolis dudes that are into, I don't know what the fuck they're into. Like, they're into something. They're, you know what I mean? They're not just listening to pop punk. Those guys
For sure.
are very musical. And especially love the drumming. Like, I thought the drumming was extremely inventive. And I was like, oh yeah, that would be amazing. And Brett thought he'd be a good fit. And I really trust Brett. And I trust Brett's judgment and taste. He's really, really a great asset. So I was like, yeah, I mean, ask him if he'd be into it. And then he was. We had band practice. I showed him the songs. I was like, fuck, what is he going to play over this shit? And first take, knew exactly what to play. It was like, there's nothing to him. And played the perfect part on everything pretty much immediately. And, you know, I was like, how do you do that? He's like, I just don't think about it. He's like, if I think about it, I'll come up with something lame. So I just start moving my arms, and whatever happens, happens. And he does all kinds of fucking Motion City Soundtrack stuff on that with a little like kind of quick tom stuff and just one hit on the bell, you know, like, but yeah, the parts are super appropriate and super musical and make the songs more catchy. And watching him get drum takes was just fucking amazing. Like, he's so fucking good at drums, and his precision and his like consistency and velocity. And we recorded the drums at Sunset Sound. So just watching a drummer that good record at Sunset Sound, that was like one of my favorite moments of my career in the band, or my recording career, or whatever. It was just like, holy shit, man. We got Rob Schnapf, Tony Thaxton. What is it, my fucking birthday? Like, this is, you know what I mean? Like, what am I, like, Make-A-Wish Foundation kid? You know what I mean? Like, this is too good to be true. So yeah, it was great.
Yeah, I mean that literally sounds like a dream come true.
Yeah, it really is. It's just like it seems like not fair, but I'm not complaining. I'm stoked.
hmm Um, Now, so a couple song specific questions about the new record.
Sure.
So you're not famous anymore. Is that about a specific child star, or is it just kind of like a
Nah,
fictional thing? Or
I mean, I got a couple people in mind. I probably shouldn't say who because it might end up in a fist fight. Which might be cool, you know.
hmm
Um, but yeah, I had a band in mind. And I actually, you know what? I didn't have a band in mind. I just was playing G major to C minor. But as soon as I kind of like realized like what I was writing about, I knew who I was writing about. But
hmm
I never like sit down to be like, hey, this would be a cool idea for a song. I'm gonna write about that. I just like either I'm like driving along and a kind of song pops in my head, and it either has like scratch lyrics, and usually with my better songs, the scratch lyrics end up being good, and I use them. But I kind of hear a song or hear a melody just kind of when I'm cruising along or walking down the street, or it used to be when I was at work a lot. Like when I was waiting tables at Mimi's Cafe, like I wrote a bunch of Joyce Manor songs. And I'd be in the back, like it was before I'd like recall myself and leave a voicemail of like I'm like, I'm singing fucking, I don't know, Orange Julius, like into my phone, like in the walk-in freezer, you can hear like the fucking motor of the freezer in the background. So anyway, when that's happening, I'm not like, so yeah, whatever. Yeah, I have someone in mind, but I didn't like sit down and like, I'm going to write a fucking diss track for this
right.
fucking idiot. Um, yeah, it's just kind of like about the nature of like we would kind of like to see people fall from grace, and we like to see people who are once up here kind of be down here. Especially, it's kind of a petty, uh, not very nice song, but it's cool. I like it. It's kind of funny. It had a lyric we took out. Like it initially had the lyric, "You got a real bad pitchfork score. Now you're not famous anymore." But took that
Nice.
out because it was a little like I don't want to sing about pitchfork.
Right, right. I get it. Um, so would you say that in general you're like more of a melodies first, lyrics second writer, or does it just kind of change depending on the song? Or
Yeah, usually it's melodies first, and then like there'll be some scratch lyrics that kind of go with it. But it's
hmm
yeah, usually the inspiration or when kind of inspiration strikes, or I feel like oh a song is happening, it's because of a melody, yeah. And then I kind of try to hopefully there's at least like a few lines in there that I can build off of, and then it's just about like well where's that going? What do I want to say? And then and sometimes it's a matter of trying not to rhyme too much and actually say what's suggested by the line that was inspired. Because a lot of times, like when it's inspired, like the melody and lyrics will kind of feel like each other. Like like an example, like "Don't Try," like that melody and that chord progression, like it feels like those lyrics. It has like a
hmm
sense of like kind of longing or like frustration and yeah, that's when it's good when the melody feels like the lyrics, and so they sound married in a cool way. But yeah, never lyrics first. I've never like written a lyric like I'm gonna write a little poem like
Right, right.
about my feelings. Like never ever ever.
hmm Um, well, another lyric question.
Sure.
On Dance with Me, and you have that line, if you're like a frightened rabbit, is that a nod towards the band at all, or a coincidence, or?
I think subconsciously I was
hmm
familiar. I was familiar with that tragedy, that a really heartbreaking situation there,
hmm
and as a dude in a band that's had some kind of low points, like yeah, it struck me, and so I think that was probably the most inspired song on the record. I think I wrote that in about 5 minutes. I think I went to the garage and was like smoked a joint and just was playing guitar in there, and I came back in and showed it to my girlfriend, and she was like, "How the fuck did you do that? Like you just came up with that?" I was like, "Yeah, is it good?" And she's like, "It's fucking really good." But she's like, "You just wrote that? Like you just came up with that?" I was like, "Yeah, like both verses just now, and like yeah, I was just inspired, and it was kind of towards the end of writing the record, so I was really in practice with like using the creative side of my brain that I was takes a while to get that kind of going again. So I was in prime condition, and yeah, I just kind of that one I wrote really quick. She hated the chorus at first. She was like, "You gotta write better lyrics for the fucking chorus." But I really like that the chorus is so simple and just like, if life is just absolutely so fucking awful and shitty, and like you can't fucking bear it, and you're trapped in your own psychological hell, like all you can do is fucking mosh, you know, like, you know, that's what it means to me. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't really fucking go crazy at shows anymore. But as a kid, that was like my favorite thing to do. Like I was in the fucking crowd kid. Cause I had a, you know, some, you know, my early life was psychological torment, you know, like, and so pitting was just awesome, you know, like just, yeah, just, she's like, you don't even like dancing. And I'm like, yeah, I don't fucking dance, but like, I love to kind of, you know, the cathartic movement to music is just awesome. And especially I think for people with some problems. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I feel like that song is really succinct, and I really mean it. And it's really true from my perspective.
I also feel like it's kind of fascinating on a lyrical level because like you have these kind of like lines that feel like they're these playful metaphors, but then like a really direct line like we're on a burning planet.
Yeah.
And it's like to hear those things
It's
kind
too
of
real.
juxtaposed. Yeah.
Yeah. It's too real. Yeah. Yeah. But upon it,
Um,
there is magic, you know, like I was like, man, that's, so yeah, some of my favorite lyrics I've ever written. And I think maybe a lot of people aren't going to like that song because it also kind of sounds like it was written by the fucking Teletubbies, you know, like, but I'm really proud of that one. And I love Chase's guitar line. Like, it kind of reminds
mm,
me of like, the Cars or something. Like, my best friend's girl has this kind of similar, like syncopated kind of, almost like chicken picking kind of thing. And I think Chase's guitar line, when I first showed him that song, and he came up with, or he kind of had that, but he kind of reworked it to that syncopation over the chorus. I was like, fuck, that is so good. Like he really elevated that one. And then Rob just did a really great job with those subtle little things that he did to that song. Just, yeah, I think that was a great team effort, and we really brought that one across the finish line personally.
mm. It's interesting that the chorus was almost maybe a little more like mosh inspired because it gave me like kind of like a 50s like bubblegum like rock and
Of
roll like do
course.
you want to dance with me kind of, you know, like
Yeah, totally,
but
totally.
even yeah, but
More
even
like
that was like
Harvest Moon, Neil Young, like yeah, it has a kind of I definitely I get what you mean. It has like a dance with me. Yeah, it doesn't sound like
yeah,
fucking yeah mosh with me, but in my head it was like
right.
that's the only dancing I've ever done in my life. I don't fucking dance, dude. Like I'm not, you know,
Hmm.
I'm not out there cutting up a rug. Like so,
Right.
um, yeah, I don't know. It's also really, really. I realized later it's pretty much almost 100% lifted from a Hepcat song, ska band Hepcat. They have a song called Dance with Me, and the
Hmm.
chorus is like really similar, but hopefully different enough, and hopefully those guys are cool and don't sue me.
um well, on that note, a Hepcat, I mean, I think is probably a band that not every Joyce Manor fan would think you're influenced by or even know.
Totally.
But I mean, you've also on this record and the previous, you have some songs written with Rory Phillips from the Impossibles, who are also a ska band.
Yeah.
And I was recently listening to your episode on the In Defense of Ska podcast, so we know you're a ska supporter.
Yeah.
Um, what would you like? I know you had talked a little bit about how like you've kind of been as a songwriter, you take notes from ska, like the kind of like melodic counterpoint and stuff from ska has influenced Joyce Manor songs. Um, if you were talking to a Joyce Manor fan who was like, "Oh, I don't know, I don't want to know anything about ska," like it's not, you know, I mean, you know how it is. Like,
Totally. Totally.
where would you bring up some examples of like I can pinpoint like here's a Joyce Manor song where you can really hear it, and also just in general, like how would you kind of sell the genre to someone who is like afraid to listen to it or thinks it sucks?
I would say like, hey, do you like "Girls Just Want to Have Fun" by Cyndi Lauper? And they'd say, yeah, duh. I'm like, you like ska? That's a fucking great ska song. Um, just I guess shit like that. Or like, I think English Beat is kind of not totally a ska band. Like there's a lot going on there. But you know, that's fucking amazing songwriting and really sophisticated. But you know, a lot of ska is fucking terrible, you know. And if you weren't there, like I was there, like for a lot of that third wave stuff, and like I went to some
Mm-hmm.
great third wave ska shows. But yeah, it's wacky, it's it's kind of dorky, you know. But just the amount of fun that was taking place at those shows, like it was so fun and so uninhibited and so unpretentious, and it was just like I feel sorry for anyone who never had to experience that, because it was just some of the best shows I ever went to, you know. And people say that about like Fishbone and stuff. Like I never got super into Fishbone. I think they're cool, but they're like Prince said they're the best live band he's ever seen. Fucking Prince, you know. So there's a lot of merit to that music, and it's fun to stick up for because it's pretty much universally discredited and despised, you know. So it's like it kind of needs someone to come to its aid, because there's a lot of really great songwriting. Like some of my favorite ska, like third wave ska bands, because everyone like kind of respects two tone, and
Mm-hmm.
anybody with a fucking brain knows that the early Jamaican shit is like some of the best music ever. So like that
Yeah,
stuff doesn't need defending.
for sure.
But the third wave shit, like some of the better third wave bands, I would say would be Slow Gherkin, which it's the name is going to turn a lot of people off. You know, like it's like a pickle. You know, it's like it's
Mm-hmm.
very good. It sounds goofy, but there's some really great songwriting on that Slow Gherkin record, like Shed Some Skin, especially. And then I would say the Siren Six are a great ska band, kind of more like mod. They have a kind of mod influence, maybe like a Elvis Costello and the Attractions kind of thing. And then I would say maybe Amity 330 and Mighty Mighty Bosstones have some like, you know, really great songwriting, some poignant lyrics, and it's not that corny, it's not that goofy, it's not that, you know, it's not that cringy. But if you wanted me to name fucking corny ass cringy ska bands, we could be here all night. You know what I mean? Like I could go head to head with anybody. But yeah,
For sure. I mean, I also kind of I feel like it's just like any style of music that gets maligned in like the mainstream media is like everybody just kind of focuses on like a couple of the bands that got really big that had a bad reputation. I mean, even like with pop
sure,
punk, right? Like it's like if
totally.
you or like emo, like if you're looking at like the biggest emo bands in the world of 2005, I get why people were like the whole genre is bad. You know,
Yeah, it's
like
that's going to be like lowest common denominator, you know. And I mean, also like this always happens. And ska's kind of having a moment, and it's because it was so maligned. It's like I remember when like new metal was a dirty word, and like now I can't go fucking 5 seconds without hearing a band that sounds like the Deftones.
Mhm.
You know, it's just like people like to. Well, actually, you think it's fucking lame, but it's really very very cool.
Mhm.
And so ska's kind of having that moment. New metal is definitely having that moment right now, and that kind of makes me want to try and be like, I mean, yeah, but guys, like fucking Limp Bizkit, like come on, like this is fucking horrible. You know what I mean? This is like it's horrible. Fucking, I get it. Like there's something, you know, to be some joy to be derived there, but like I don't know, man. I lived through it already. I already lived through the Deftones. I remember like I was in high school when they were fucking popular. And Deftones, I mean, I kind of get what people like it. It's not my cup of tea, but I know I didn't fuck with new metal then. I don't fuck with it now. But
Mhm.
Limp Bizkit, man, that's fucking horrible, man.
I definitely feel like Deftones are kind of like the one you're allowed to like even
Yeah,
before like the
sure. It'd
like
be like, did you know they were actually really into shoegaze? I'm like,
right yeah,
I
I
don't
mean
give a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So
right.
that's me.
Uh, um now like you said ska's kind of having like a moment right now. You think Joyce Manor would ever like take a ska band on tour?
Nah, because
No.
I don't. I'm not sure. I really love the moment that Ska's having. It's kind of
Hmm.
like this semi-ironic Twitter shit, like fucking Eve Six guy and all that shit. I'm just like, it's a little. It all has it seems a little icky to me, and I fucking love ska, but I love it in a very genuine way where I don't need this to be like a bit. You know, it's not a bit. Like I fucking went to some amazing shows and fucking skanked my ass off, and it wasn't at all ironic. And I know not every band, like, you know, Catbite, they know their shit and they're just doing it. You know, like, they're just doing it. But I think all those fools need to get the fuck off Twitter and quit fucking flying the flag on. It's a little poisoned and a little icky to me. So I'm not getting involved with any of that shit. Like, my love of ska is real and predates social media, and it doesn't make any sense for Joyce Manor to be out of ska band. Like, but you know, you see really cool flyers from the '90s of like June of '44, or like some like Christie Front Drive playing with like Mustard Plug or some shit. You know, like you see these crazy mixed bills with like Coalesce on it for some reason too. Like,
Right.
so you'd see these trippy bills and stuff, but I rather just, yeah, I'm good. I'm good on the. But that being said, like, I did an interview for that Indefensive Ska podcast. I'm happy to talk about ska and stuff, and I love Aaron and uh, why am I fucking blanking on his name? Adam from Legady. Yeah, I love those dudes, but like, yeah, I don't think I need to lean. We're not going to do a fucking ska version of our record anytime soon.
Right. Right. For sure. Yeah. So kind of also ska related. Let's talk about the album title.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So it's
damn.
Right. So the story is that it comes from an auto-corrected text about the first Sublime album.
Yep.
So at what point did it go from funny inside joke to like, okay, we're actually going to name our album this?
I always struggle to come up with a title, and I always go through a few working titles and a few covers, or I'm like, yeah, this is the cover. And then 3 weeks later, I'm like, no. I got something better. So I'm always looking, trying to find that, just the right cover and the right title that goes with the cover. And yeah, I went through a bunch of different covers and a bunch of different titles. The record was originally called Show Up and Starve, which I thought was a great title. And went through a few different covers. The record was going to be called Hungover Again. There's a picture of me eating a burrito on the cover, looking like complete shit, hungover as hell. And I was like, yeah, I'll call it Hungover Again. But that kind of started to feed into this like lore, this like never hungover again lore, like create this kind of, and I was like, that's a bit much, you know? And so I was texting my friend about Sublime. I was listening to 40 Ounces of Freedom for the first time in about 7 or 8 years, and it was blowing me away. I couldn't believe how many good songs were on it that I'd forgotten about. I was like, oh, fuck, man, yeah, this one. Like, oh, God, like, this song is so good. And so I texted a friend of mine. I was like, when was the last time you listened to 40 Ounces to Freedom? But it autocorrected to Fresno, and I was like, 40 Ounces to Fresno. I like the ring of it. It sounded like very Joyce Manor-y to me. It's kind of bleak. It's alcoholic, misanthropic, you know, like, I love Fresno. I have a lot of love for Fresno, but it's kind of a bleak place, you know, like there's a lot of bleak shit there. So yeah, it just worked for me. And then it went really well with the cover. So I think the cover looks super ominous. And yeah, you know, like, I've lived in Long Beach since 2007 for 15 years, you know, so Long Beach is a big part of my identity and who I am. I wrote all these songs in Long Beach. So a little subtle nod to Sublime, who I think are a fucking great band, you know, completely no sense of irony at all saying that. Yeah.
Nice.
And it's cool to shout out Fresno too. I love Fresno. We've had great shows there. So yeah, I just like the title. That worked.
Yeah, it's definitely got a ring to it.
Yeah.
So that's like basically everything I prepared. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that I haven't asked about, or anything you want to shout out?
Nah. Yeah. Thanks for taking time to talk to me. I hope people like the record, and we worked really hard on it. And yeah, thanks for listening.
All right. Well, that just about does it for the first ever episode of the Brooklyn Vegan Podcast. Thanks for listening. Thanks again to Barry. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, and find us 24/7 at BrooklynVegan.com, where we're constantly posting music news, album reviews, live coverage, and more. See you next time.